I never thought the sound of silence could terrify me, silence where there should have been the rush of water, the gurgle of pipes filling a bathtub, the hiss of the shower to ease my wife's contractions. Instead, when I twisted the faucet handle, nothing came out. Not a drop. Just a dry screech like the house itself was mocking me. And in that moment, I knew something was horribly wrong. My wife Anna was upstairs in our bedroom, clutching her stomach, sweat plastering strands of hair to her pale face. She was 9 months pregnant, and the contractions had come on faster than either of us expected. I'd been preparing the tub with warm water like our midwife suggested, something to help her body relax before we drove to the hospital. But the water had betrayed us. Or rather, someone had. You see, this wasn't just a plumbing issue. It was a deliberate act. I knew it the second I looked out the window and saw her, Karen, our HOA president, standing in front of the utility shutoff box near the curb, arms folded, a smug little smile tugging at her lips like she'd just declared victory in a war no one else was fighting. It wasn't the first time she'd pulled stunts like this. She fined me for excessively green grass during a drought because I'd watered my lawn twice in 1 week. She'd left warning letters about the color of our shutters, even though they were HOA-approved beige. She'd even complained about the smell of Anna's prenatal vitamins. Can you imagine? But this, shutting off our water when my wife was in labor, this was new. This was dangerous. This was war. Anna's cry from upstairs snapped me out of the trance. "Daniel," she called, her voice breaking, trembling with pain. "Something happening, the baby." I sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time. The air in our bedroom felt thick with fear and sweat, heavy with the coppery scent of blood that I shouldn't have smelled yet. My heart slammed against my ribs. She was sitting on the bed, hands gripping the sheets, eyes wide and glassy. "It's too soon," she gasped. "We don't have time." I took her hands, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I'm here. I've got you." But inside, my chest was a furnace of panic. I was the director of operations at St. Mercy's Hospital, but right now in my own home, I felt utterly powerless. The irony was cruel. I spent my career making sure patients and families had what they needed, yet here we were, abandoned by the most basic necessity, water, because of a neighbor drunk on her own power. I dashed downstairs, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone. I called the water company first, only to be met with the monotone of an automated message. Then I called 911, my voice breaking as I explained the situation. The operator assured me paramedics were on the way, but traffic might delay them. Traffic, delay. Words that didn't fit the urgency of Anna's cries echoing down the staircase. I slammed the phone onto the counter and stormed outside. The night air was thick, humid, buzzing with cicadas. Porch lights flickered on as curious neighbors peeked through blinds. And there she was, Karen. Still standing there, sipping from a smug little tumbler, her blonde bob perfectly in place, her pastel cardigan glowing under the street lamp like some suburban angel of vengeance. "Why?" I demanded, my voice raw, almost breaking. "Why would you shut off our water? My wife is in labor." She tilted her head, squinting at me as though I were some unruly child. "Rules are rules, Daniel. You didn't pay the late fee from last month's HOA dues. That means suspension of privileges, including utilities. You knew this." Suspension of privileges, as if water was some luxury spa membership and not a necessity of life. As if childbirth could be paused, rescheduled, neatly filed under noncompliance. "Karen," I hissed, stepping closer, fists clenched. "If anything happens to my wife or my baby, that blood is on your hands." Her smirk faltered just slightly, but she straightened her cardigan and lifted her chin. "You should have thought of that before breaking the rules. Actions have consequences." At that moment, Anna screamed again from inside the house. It wasn't just a cry of pain, it was primal, guttural, the kind of sound that makes your soul fracture. My knees almost buckled hearing it. And Karen, she flinched, but she didn't move. I wanted to shake her, to scream, to tear the shut-off box open with my bare hands. But instead, I ran back inside. Anna was hunched over, tears streaking her face, her breathing ragged. "It hurts, Daniel, it hurts so much." I grabbed a towel, wet it with the last trickle of water from the upstairs bathroom, just enough to dab her forehead. My hands trembled as I stroked her hair, whispering lies about everything being okay, lies I desperately wanted to believe. The sound of sirens finally cut through the night, faint but approaching. Relief surged through me, but it was quickly drowned by another thought: what if they were too late? And then it happened. Anna's water broke, except it wasn't clear like it should have been. It was tinged with red, too much red. I froze, staring at the sheets, at my wife's trembling body, at the life we had fought so hard to create. My stomach dropped, bile rising in my throat. I had seen this before, at the hospital, in emergency rooms where every second counts. It was a complication, and without immediate intervention, it could cost us everything. I looked out the window again at the glowing silhouette of Karen standing in the street, sipping her drink, satisfied with her petty victory. She had no idea she had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And in that moment, I swore to myself, no matter what happened tonight, she was going to regret it. But as I held Anna's hand and listened to her ragged breaths, one horrifying question pulsed through my head like a drumbeat. Would the paramedics even make it in time? The sound of Anna's screams echoed in my head as I sat by her side, gripping her hand. Every contraction tore through her body like a storm, and every second without proper care felt like a knife twisting in my chest. The paramedics were on their way, but in that fragile space between hope and despair, my mind betrayed me. It dragged me backward, back to the roots of all this chaos, to the moments when Karen first planted herself like a weed in our lives. It didn't start with water shutoffs or fines. No, Karen's war was subtle at first, the kind you almost laugh off because it seems too ridiculous to be real. The first time I noticed her obsession with control was 3 years ago, not long after Anna and I moved into the neighborhood. It was summer. The air smelled of grilled burgers and cut grass, children shrieking as they chased each other with water balloons. I was staining the back deck, sweating through my shirt, when Karen appeared at the property line, holding a clipboard like it was a badge of authority. "Afternoon, Daniel," she said, her voice clipped precise. "I couldn't help but notice you're using a stain color that isn't on the HOA's approved list." I remember blinking at her, confused. "It's brown, just brown." Her lips curved into that tight little smirk. "Yes, but it's cedar brown. Our guidelines only allow chestnut brown. Very different undertones, you see." Anna had come out onto the porch, her sundress fluttering in the warm breeze, her smile warm and patient. "Surely that's not a big deal," she'd said, laughter in her voice. "It's practically the same color." Karen didn't laugh. She just scribbled something on her clipboard and said, "Rules exist for a reason." Then she walked away, leaving behind a trail of suspicion and unease that clung to me like smoke. At first, I brushed it off. A petty woman with too much time on her hands, I told myself. But the warnings piled up, trash cans left out 10 minutes too long, grass an inch too high, seasonal decorations deemed excessive. Always us, never the other neighbors. Anna, bless her heart, tried to smooth things over. She'd bring Karen baskets of muffins, compliment her hydrangeas, even invite her in for tea. But Karen wasn't interested in friendship. She was interested in dominance, and for some reason we became her favorite targets. I wasn't blind to what was happening. Karen's power wasn't just about the HOA, it was about control. And like all people obsessed with control, she picked the people least willing to bow to her. I wouldn't lick her boots, and Anna wouldn't gossip behind neighbors' backs. That made us dangerous in her eyes, outsiders. But there was something else, too, something deeper. One night, about a year after we moved in, I was walking home from the hospital late. It was past midnight, the air cool and damp. I saw Karen standing by our mailbox, her arms crossed, talking to Mr. Henderson, the HOA treasurer. Their voices were low, but I caught enough to freeze me in my tracks. "They think they're better than us," she hissed. "Just because he's some big shot at the hospital, people like that don't respect rules. They think rules are for everyone else." Henderson nodded like a loyal dog. "We can't let that kind of attitude spread." It hit me then, this wasn't just Karen being petty, this was personal. She resented me. She resented Anna, our jobs, our education, our refusal to cower. And she was determined to remind us that in this neighborhood she was queen. I should have confronted her then. I should have called her out, drawn a line in the sand. But I didn't. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that feeding her obsession would only make things worse. So I let it go. I let her think she had power. And now, years later, my pregnant wife was paying the price for my silence. "Daniel," Anna's voice yanked me back to the present. She was gripping my wrist, her eyes glazed with pain. "Do you remember when we laughed about her measuring our grass?" I forced a smile, though my throat was tight. "Yeah, you said she must have been sneaking out at night with a ruler." A faint laugh slipped from her lips, cut short by a groan as another contraction gripped her. I stroked her hand, guilt gnawing at me. If I had fought harder, if I had pushed back years ago, would we be here now? Would she be bleeding, trembling, vulnerable while Karen stood outside sipping her smug little cocktail? The shrill wail of sirens grew louder, and for a moment relief washed over me. But it wasn't just relief, it was anger too. Because as I listened to Anna gasp for breath, I realized something Karen never had. Rules mean nothing when life is on the line. But there was another layer to this story, one I hadn't told Anna yet. Months before tonight, I attended an HOA meeting against my better judgment. Karen had insisted I come, claiming they were revising utility policies. I expected boring talk about landscaping budgets, but what I heard chilled me. Karen was pushing a new clause. Utility access may be suspended for noncompliance with HOA dues or regulations. I'd stood furious, pointing out that such a clause was illegal, that HOAs didn't have the authority to control water, power, or gas. But Karen, ever manipulative, twisted my words. If you're so concerned, Daniel, maybe you should pay your dues on time like everyone else. The room had murmured in agreement. No one dared challenge her. And that was when I realized Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was rewriting them, bending the HOA into her personal weapon. I'd voted against it, of course, but the measure passed, and tonight Karen used it against us. As the flashing red lights of the ambulance spilled into our driveway, I whispered to Anna, "Help's here. Hold on." 2 paramedics rushed in, carrying bags of equipment, their radios crackling. They moved with practiced precision, but I saw the flicker of worry in their eyes when they saw the blood. Placental abruption, one muttered to the other. My stomach sank. I knew what that meant. They began working quickly. Oxygen mask, IV line, blood pressure cuff. I tried to stay calm, to be her anchor, but every beep of their monitors shredded me. One paramedic looked up. "We need to transport her immediately." I nodded, but then his gaze shifted just slightly toward the window, toward the street. Karen was still standing there, watching as my wife bled, as my child's life hung in the balance. The paramedic lowered his voice. "Sir, did your neighbor actually shut off your water?" I swallowed hard, shame and fury colliding. "Yes." His eyes darkened. He didn't say anything more, but the look he gave Karen was full of disgust. As they wheeled Anna toward the stretcher, she gripped my hand again, weak but desperate. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise me you won't let her get away with this." Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. And in that moment, I felt the weight of all my past choices pressing down on me. I had stayed silent too long. I had let Karen's cruelty go unchecked, but tonight was different. Tonight, my silence would end. The paramedics lifted the stretcher, moving quickly toward the ambulance. I followed, my heart pounding, every nerve screaming at me to stay by Anna's side. But as we reached the door, a voice cut through the night. Karen's voice. "Don't forget, Daniel," she called, her tone smug, venomous. "Rules are rules." And I stopped cold. Because in that moment, as the paramedics slammed the doors shut and the sirens wailed back to life, I realized something terrifying. Karen thought she had won, but she had no idea who she had just gone to war with. The ambulance jolted forward, sirens slicing through the night, red lights bouncing off houses that suddenly felt like cages. I sat inside, gripping Anna's trembling hand, my heart hammering in rhythm with the paramedics' clipped orders. Every beep of the monitor was a dagger. Every groan from Anna tore something raw inside me. Her face was pale, drenched in sweat, her eyes fluttering open just long enough to whisper, "Stay with me." "I'm not going anywhere," I promised, pressing my forehead to hers. But the truth clawed at me. I couldn't guarantee that, not yet. The paramedics worked quickly, oxygen, fluids, monitoring, but the blood loss was alarming. My medical training told me what I didn't want to admit out loud. We were running out of time. When the hospital finally came into view, a strange calm washed over me. St. Mercy wasn't just any hospital, it was my hospital, the place I had dedicated my life to, the place where I was director of operations. I knew every hallway, every emergency code, every face. And tonight, that authority was going to be my weapon. The ER doors burst open and my colleagues rushed forward. Nurses, doctors, orderlies, they all snapped into motion. Anna was wheeled toward the trauma room and I jogged alongside, barking orders with a voice that wasn't entirely mine. "Get Dr. Patel in here now. Notify Ob Page anesthesia, and for God's sake, get blood ready." Heads nodded, feet pounded, machines beeped. For a moment, I felt control slipping back into my hands, but beneath that control was a fire that wouldn't go out. "Karen," I couldn't get her face out of my mind, standing there like she was untouchable, like her rules mattered more than my wife's life. And the worst part? She had no idea how close she'd come to killing both Anna and our baby. While doctors worked on stabilizing Anna, I paced the hallway, my fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't just wait. So I called my brother, Mark. Mark was a detective, rough around the edges, blunt as hell, but fiercely loyal. When he picked up, his voice was groggy. "Dan, it's midnight, what's—" "She shut it off," I snapped. He paused. "Who?" "Karen, the HOA witch. She shut off our water while Anna was in labor, placental abruption. We barely made it." The silence on the other end was heavy. Then Mark exhaled sharply. "That's attempted murder, Dan." I swallowed hard. Hearing the words spoken out loud made my stomach twist. Attempted murder, my wife, my unborn child. "I want her held accountable," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "No more warnings, no more fines, no more games. She crossed the line." Mark's voice hardened. "Then we build a case. But listen to me, this isn't just an HOA issue anymore. This is criminal. You sure you're ready to go public with this? It'll get ugly." I glanced through the glass window at Anna, surrounded by machines and nurses, her fragile body fighting for both herself and our child. My chest ached, but my voice was steady. "Ugly doesn't scare me anymore. Losing them does." Mark muttered something under his breath, then said, "I'll be there in 20, don't leave." I hung up and leaned against the wall, my body trembling. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and coffee, sharp and sterile, a smell I usually found comforting. But tonight, it felt like a reminder of how close we'd come to tragedy. And then, as if fate wanted to stoke the flames higher, my phone buzzed. A message from Karen. "Hope everything's okay with your wife. Remember, rules are rules," smiling face with smiling eyes. The emoji, that smug little smile at the end. My vision blurred red. She wasn't even pretending to be sorry. She was mocking me, mocking Anna, mocking the life we almost lost. I nearly threw my phone against the wall, but a thought stopped me. Evidence. That text wasn't just cruelty, it was proof. Proof of intent. Proof of malice. And suddenly, I knew exactly how this was going to end. But here's the thing about revenge. It's never simple. It's never clean. You think you're in control, but the moment you act, the whole board shifts. And as I stared at that message, a chilling question rooted itself in my mind. How far was I willing to go to make sure Karen paid? The doors to the trauma room swung open, and Dr. Patel stepped out, pulling down his mask. His eyes were steady, but his face was lined with fatigue. "She's stable for now," he said. "We've slowed the bleeding, but we need to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is dropping." My throat tightened. "Do whatever it takes." Patel nodded, then disappeared back inside. I slid down the wall, burying my face in my hands. My entire body shook. This wasn't just about tonight anymore. This was about every moment Karen had tormented us, every petty fine, every veiled insult, every smug smirk when she thought she'd won. Tonight she had shown her true face. And I wasn't going to let her hide behind rules anymore. The minutes dragged like hours. I stared at the ceiling tiles, each one blurring into the next, my mind replaying every second of the evening. The faucet screeching dry, Anna's cries, the blood, Karen's silhouette in the street. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, Patel returned. His eyes softened. "The baby is out. Your wife is stable. Both are in recovery." Relief crashed into me so hard my knees almost buckled. Tears blurred my vision as I exhaled a prayer I hadn't realized I was holding. But the relief was temporary, because even as I rushed to see Anna and our child, the fire inside me didn't go out. If anything, it burned hotter. And when Mark arrived, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights, I knew this night was far from over. He pulled me aside, his voice low but firm. "We're not just talking HOA fines anymore. With the text, the witnesses, the medical emergency, you've got a case strong enough to bury her." I clenched my fists. "Then let's bury her." Mark's jaw tightened. "Be careful, Dan. People like Karen, they don't go down without dragging others with them." I nodded, but my mind was already made up. Karen had written her own ending the moment she shut off that water. I turned back toward the recovery room, where Anna lay with our newborn resting on her chest, their fragile breaths in sync. My heart swelled with love and rage, two forces crashing like waves inside me. And as I stood there, watching the family I almost lost, I whispered a vow only I could hear. Karen doesn't know it yet, but her reign of control is about to end. The morning sun had barely touched the horizon when I finally stepped out of the hospital. My body felt like lead, my clothes stiff with dried sweat, and my heart torn between joy and fury. Inside, Anna slept soundly with our newborn daughter, a tiny miracle who had survived despite the chaos. I should have been celebrating. I should have been overwhelmed with gratitude. But instead, I stood on the sidewalk staring at the dawn, and all I could think about was Karen. Her face haunted me, the smirk, the folded arms, the text message with that mocking, smiley face. She had almost cost me everything, and yet she probably slept in her pristine house, oblivious, convinced that she had won. I couldn't let it go, not this time. Mark walked out behind me, his tie loosened, his badge clipped to his belt. He looked exhausted but focused. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded. "Let's end this." We drove back to the neighborhood in silence. Every turn of the road tightened the coil of rage inside me. By the time we pulled into my driveway, Karen was already outside, watering her hydrangeas with a smug little grin. The irony of it nearly made me laugh. She had shut off our water hours ago, but now she stood there, hose in hand, showering her flowers like she was the queen of the world. Her eyes flicked to us as the car stopped. She tilted her head, smirk widening. Well, look who's back. Did everything go smoothly at the hospital?" Mark stepped out first, his badge glinting in the morning light. Karen's smirk faltered for a split second, but she recovered quickly, straightening her pastel cardigan like armor. "Karen," I said, my voice low, raw, "my wife almost died last night. My child almost died because of you." Her laugh was brittle, nervous. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Daniel. You're exaggerating. I was just enforcing the rules. Everyone has to follow them." Mark's jaw tightened. He pulled out his notepad. "Enforcing rules doesn't mean tampering with utilities. That's illegal, Karen, and when your actions directly endanger lives, that's a criminal offense." Her eyes darted between us, the confidence starting to crack. I didn't know she was in labor. How could I have known?" I pulled out my phone and shoved the screen toward her. The text message glared back. "Hope everything's okay with your wife. Remember, rules are rules," smiling face with smiling eyes. Her face drained of color. For the first time, she didn't have a quick retort. Mark stepped closer, his voice hard as steel. "That text alone proves intent, and with witnesses who saw you at the shut-off box plus the medical emergency that followed, you're in serious trouble, Karen." She stammered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean, I thought you were lying. People fake emergencies all the time to get out of fines. I was just making sure you followed the rules." "Rules?" I snapped, my voice shaking with rage. "Rules don't mean a damn thing when a mother and child are bleeding out on a bed. Rules don't matter when lives are on the line. You almost killed them." Neighbors had begun to gather, drawn by the raised voices. Curtains twitched, doors creaked open. Whispers spread like wildfire. For years, Karen had ruled this neighborhood through fear and intimidation. But now they were seeing her stripped bare. Mark pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Karen Wilson, you're under arrest for criminal negligence and reckless endangerment." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen stumbled backward, her perfect bob trembling as her mask of superiority shattered. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president." Mark didn't even flinch. "You're not above the law." He turned her around and clicked the cuffs onto her wrists. The sound was sharp, final, like the closing of a door she'd never open again. Karen's voice rose, shrill and desperate. "He's lying. Daniel's making this up. You all know me. I've only ever tried to keep this neighborhood safe and orderly." But the neighbors weren't nodding this time. They weren't murmuring agreement. They were whispering, shaking their heads, glaring. For the first time, the queen had no subjects. As Mark led her toward the squad car, she twisted around, her eyes wild. "This isn't over, Daniel. You'll regret this." I stood there, chest heaving, my fists clenched at my sides. For years, she had made us feel small, powerless. But today, the power was mine. And yet, as the squad car pulled away, a strange emptiness settled in my chest. I had wanted this moment for so long, but it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Because while Karen was gone, the damage she caused still lingered. Anna's recovery wouldn't be quick. Our baby's first hours of life had been drenched in fear and blood, and no arrest could erase that. The neighbors slowly drifted away, whispering among themselves. Some gave me sympathetic nods, others looked ashamed for having stood by all these years. But I didn't care about them. I only cared about getting back to the hospital, back to Anna and our daughter. As I turned to leave, one of the older neighbors, Mrs. Green, touched my arm. Her voice trembled. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. We should have spoken up sooner. She's been out of control for years." I nodded, my throat tight. "It's too late for sorry. Just don't let anyone like her rule you again." Driving back to the hospital, Mark glanced at me. "You know this won't end here, right? She'll fight it. Lawyers, HOA funds, whatever she can throw at you." I stared out the window, the houses blurring past. "Then let her fight. I'm done being silent." When we walked back into the hospital, the sterile air hit me like a wave. I hurried down the hallway, every step heavy with exhaustion and adrenaline. And then, finally, I pushed open the door to the recovery room. Anna was awake, her eyes tired but glowing as she cradled our daughter against her chest. The sight knocked the breath out of me. My knees almost gave way. "She's perfect," Anna whispered, her voice soft, awed. "Daniel, look at her." I leaned over, my hand trembling as I touched the baby's tiny fingers. She curled them around mine, impossibly small, impossibly strong. My throat burned with tears I couldn't hold back. For a moment, all the rage, all the chaos melted away. All I could see was them. My family, my reason for everything. But even in that fragile moment of peace, Karen's voice echoed in my mind. "This isn't over." And deep down, I knew she was right. Because people like Karen, they don't go quietly. The question gnawed at me as I kissed Anna's forehead, as I whispered promises to our daughter, as I tried to steady my shaking hands. What would Karen do next to claw back the power she'd lost? The waiting room lights buzzed faintly above me, sterile and too bright, making my skin crawl as I sat with my head buried in my hands. Every second felt like a hammer striking steel, loud, sharp, merciless. The memory of my wife's scream when the contractions hit hard still rang in my ears, and the image of her gasping for water, her lips cracked from thirst because of Karen's cruelty, clawed at my insides. I should have been at her side the entire time, soothing her, whispering that everything would be okay. But instead, I was torn between comforting her and speaking with the attending physician about the evidence I had just brought in. When I finally gathered the strength to walk into her room, the sound of the fetal monitor filled the space. Steady beeps, reassuring but fragile, like the rhythm of a bird's wings fighting against a storm. My wife lay in the hospital bed, her hair damp with sweat, her hands trembling as she gripped the blanket. Her eyes, though heavy with exhaustion, found mine immediately. "You're here," she whispered, her voice so faint I had to lean closer to catch it. "I'll always be here," I told her, squeezing her hand. "They've got you, and I won't let anything happen to you or the baby." She tried to smile, but another contraction ripped through her body, twisting her face into a grimace. I felt utterly powerless watching her. As a hospital director, I was used to being in control, signing off policies, ensuring smooth operations, holding the reins. But as a husband, standing in that room, I was stripped down to a desperate man praying for his wife and child. Just then, Dr. Patel walked in holding a folder. He gave me a look, one that held gravity. "We ran some tests on her hydration levels and stress markers. She's severely dehydrated and the baby's under distress." His voice was calm but tight, as though holding back the urgency. Dehydration, stress. My mind burned with rage, all because one woman decided to play God with my family's water. "What does that mean for them?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my chest throbbed with fear. Dr. Patel flipped the folder open. "We're stabilizing her with IV fluids. It's helping, but the evidence is clear. The stress and lack of water before admission made the labor more dangerous than it should have been." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You said something about foul play." I nodded. "The HOA president, Karen. She shut off our water deliberately. I caught her on the property manager's call records right before it happened. She knew my wife was in labor. She did it to spite us." His lips pressed into a thin line. "You realize this could become not just a civil matter, but criminal. Endangerment, reckless disregard for human life, especially with a pregnant woman involved." I glanced at my wife, her eyelids fluttering as she fought through another contraction. Her knuckles had gone white from clutching the sheets. She didn't need to hear all the details right now. She needed strength, not more burdens. Dr. Patel lowered his voice. "We'll document everything. Every hydration marker, every stress spike, every medical necessity caused by this delay. This will be evidence clear as day." "Evidence, proof, justice." I swallowed the lump in my throat, leaning down to kiss my wife's forehead. They've got all the proof they need, love. You just focus on bringing our baby safely. Hours blurred together in a haze of beeps, cries, whispered reassurances, and the acrid sting of antiseptic filling the air. The labor stretched on, each contraction like a wave crashing harder than the last, and I found myself holding her hand so tightly I was afraid I might hurt her. But she never let go. At one point between contractions, she looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Why would she do this? Why would anyone? I didn't have an answer. I wanted to say it was just cruelty, pettiness, the intoxication of power. But how could I explain the mind of someone so twisted that she'd gamble with another person's life? Because she thought she could get away with it, I finally said. But she won't. Another contraction stole her breath, and she screamed, the sound tearing through me like a knife. Nurses rushed in, adjusting monitors, calling out vitals. "The baby's heart rate is dipping," one of them shouted. For a moment, the world froze. The only thing I could hear was the quickening panic in the room and the terrifying possibility that we might lose everything in a single instant. My hands went cold, my knees weak. Dr. Patel barked instructions. "We're prepping for an emergency intervention. Call anesthesiology now." The word emergency echoed through my skull like a war drum. I felt my wife's grip tighten around my hand, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't let them take our baby," she whispered hoarsely. "They won't," I swore, my voice cracking. "I promise you they won't." They wheeled her toward the surgical wing, and though I tried to follow, a nurse held me back. "You can't go in yet, sir, please." I stood there, heart pounding, as the doors shut in my face. My reflection glared back at me in the glass panel, disheveled, desperate, a man on the edge. The sound of my wife's cries echoing down the hallway haunted me. I sank onto a chair outside, pressing my palms into my eyes. The fluorescent lights burned above me, and every second without news gnawed at my sanity. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. When I pulled it out, I saw an email alert from our HOA's automated system. Notice of fine, unauthorized water access, $2, 500. My vision blurred red. Even as my wife and baby fought for their lives inside, Karen was still pulling strings, still tormenting us. My hands shook as I clenched the phone so hard I thought it would shatter. And in that moment, sitting in the hospital hallway with the weight of 2 lives on the line, I made a vow. This wasn't going to end with just medical reports and fines. This was going to end with the truth tearing her empire apart. Just then the surgical doors swung open and Dr. Patel emerged, his mask hanging around his neck, sweat beading on his forehead. His eyes met mine. "You need to come with me," he said. I rose to my feet, my chest seizing with both hope and terror. "What happened?" I asked, my voice shaking. He exhaled slowly, almost as if choosing his words with surgical precision. "We managed to stabilize both of them, but there's something you need to see. The wife and baby are alive, for now. But the doctor hints at something bigger, something the narrator needs to face immediately." I followed Dr. Patel down the long, sterile hallway, my legs heavy, as though each step carried the weight of my entire life. His silence gnawed at me. He didn't speak until we entered his private office. Inside, the fluorescent light hummed above the stacks of patient files, the faint scent of disinfectant clinging to the air. He closed the door softly behind us, turned, and handed me a tablet. "Your wife and baby are stable for now," he said first, almost as if to anchor me before delivering something harder. My knees nearly gave out at those words. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. "There's more," he continued. "We pulled her blood work, hydration markers, fetal distress records. This isn't just a medical case anymore. It's legal. It's evidence." He turned the screen toward me and I saw the charts, the dangerously low sodium levels, the spikes in cortisol from extreme stress, the erratic fetal heartbeat before fluids were administered. The graphs painted a brutal story, one even Karen's smug face couldn't talk her way out of. But then Dr. Patel leaned back, folding his arms. "Before we proceed, I need to know, how far are you willing to take this? If we file this officially, it'll move into criminal investigation territory. HOA leadership, your neighbors, they'll all be dragged into it. And you'll be the one putting them there." The room seemed to shrink around me. I thought of my wife, pale and exhausted, lying in recovery with our baby in the NICU. I thought of Karen, sipping wine on her porch with that permanent sneer, never imagining her little game could unravel into something catastrophic. And then I thought of my parents. My father, he was the one who had convinced me years ago to buy into this HOA-controlled neighborhood. He liked the orderliness, the manicured lawns, the prestige of it all. He had always believed in keeping the peace no matter what. And my mother, well, she was friendly with Karen in that superficial, tight-smiled way suburban women pretended to be friends while secretly competing. If I went forward with this, I wouldn't just be challenging Karen. I'd be tearing open a wound that cut through my entire family. Director, Patel said carefully, if you stay silent, this could happen to someone else. Someone without the resources you have. Someone who might not survive it. His words hit like stones. Silence would mean complicity. Silence would mean betrayal, not just of my wife and child, but of every family in that neighborhood who might one day find themselves under Karen's thumb. I rubbed my temples, my head pounding. I'll take it forward every step of the way. I don't care who it hurts. Patel nodded once firm, as if he'd expected that answer. Then you'll need allies, because HOA boards, they don't crumble quietly. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister, Layla. Heard about the baby. Is everything okay? Call me. I hadn't told her everything yet, just that my wife had gone into emergency labor. But Layla had always been the sharp one in the family, the one who saw through facades. She also had her own long-standing battles with Karen, though my parents always told her to let it go. I called her immediately. Layla, I need you at the hospital. Now it's about Karen. There was a pause, then her voice came low and steady. What did she do this time? By the time she arrived, I had gathered the documents Patel printed for me. Layla walked in, her hair tied back, her expression already laced with suspicion. I shut the office door and handed her the folder. She skimmed the pages quickly, her eyes widening with each line. She did this while your wife was in labor, her voice cracked into fury. She cut the water. I nodded, my throat tightening. Layla slammed the folder down on Patel's desk. That witch could have killed them, and you know what's worse? Mom and Dad are going to tell you to drop it, to keep it in the neighborhood. She wasn't wrong. Our parents had always prioritized image over integrity. To them, calling out Karen publicly would be an embarrassment, a disruption to the carefully crafted reputation of their perfect subdivision. But Layla leaned forward, her eyes blazing. You can't let them silence you this time, not when it's your family, not when it's life or death. Her words cracked something open inside me. For so long, I'd tried to straddle both worlds, the obedient son who respected his parents' obsession with appearances, and the man who knew right from wrong in his bones. But now those worlds had collided, and one of them had to burn. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. A nurse peeked in. Sir, your parents are here. I froze. Layla muttered under her breath. Of course they are. When my parents entered, my mother rushed to me first, clutching my hands. We heard she's stable. Thank God. How's the baby? In NICU but alive, I said softly. My father's eyes, however, flicked to the folder on Patel's desk. What's this? He asked sharply. Layla crossed her arms. It's proof, Dad, proof that Karen nearly killed them. My father stiffened. Don't be dramatic. I'm sure it was just a mix-up with the utilities. I cut him off, my voice rising. It wasn't a mix-up. She shut off our water on purpose during labor. She wanted to hurt us, and she nearly did. My father's face darkened. Even if that's true, do you know what will happen if you press charges? The neighborhood will turn against you. It'll be a scandal. The HOA will retaliate. Scandal? I snapped, my anger boiling over. My wife almost died, Dad. Our child almost died, and you're worried about gossip. The room went silent. My mother's eyes darted between us, her lips trembling, but she said nothing. Layla finally broke the silence. You raised us to believe in doing what's right, but when it actually matters, you hide behind reputation. Well, I'm not hiding anymore, and neither is he. She pointed at me. I looked my father dead in the eyes. I'm pressing charges. I don't care what it costs. You can either stand with me or against me. For the first time in my life, I saw him falter. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. My mother sat down slowly, covering her face with her hands. Dr. Patel cleared his throat gently, reclaiming the room. The evidence is strong. Once you sign these statements, I'll forward everything to the authorities. I took the pen, my hand trembling slightly. Signing those papers felt like cutting the final thread tying me to my parents' world of pretense. But as the ink dried, a strange calm washed over me. Because for the first time, I wasn't just a son or a director or a neighbor. I was a husband, a father, and I was going to protect my family no matter the cost. When Patel collected the forms, he gave me a small nod of approval. "It's done, but be ready. This won't stay quiet." And I knew he was right. Karen wasn't the kind of person to go down without dragging others into the fire with her. Still, as I left the office and walked back toward my wife's recovery room, I felt lighter, stronger. Like the truth, once spoken, had given me a weapon sharper than anything Karen had ever wielded. When I stepped inside, my wife looked up at me weakly, the faintest of smiles curving her lips. "It's over," she asked. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and kissed her gently. "No," I whispered, "it's just beginning." The morning sun crept through the hospital blinds, painting faint golden lines across the floor. I hadn't slept. My body begged for rest, but my mind refused. All night I sat by my wife's bed, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, the soft squeak of the IV drip, and the distant lull of footsteps echoing down the corridor. Every sound reminded me how close I had come to losing everything. Our baby was stable in the NICU, wrapped in wires and monitors, but alive. That word, alive, meant more to me than anything else now. I couldn't stop staring at the tiny photo the nurse had given me. A blurry shot, but perfect in every way. My wife stirred, her hand brushing mine. Her eyes opened slowly, still heavy with exhaustion. "Did you sleep?" she whispered. I shook my head, forcing a tired smile. "Didn't want to. I didn't want to miss a second." She exhaled softly, squeezing my hand. "We made it." But deep down, I knew we hadn't made it yet, not fully. There was still the matter of Karen and the fallout. Later that afternoon, I was summoned to a meeting room at the hospital. A detective waited inside, Detective Harris, stern, broad-shouldered, with eyes that seemed to weigh the truth the moment you opened your mouth. Beside him sat Dr. Patel, and across the table, shockingly, was my father. I froze in the doorway. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He cleared his throat. I thought you could use someone to mediate. I spoke with the detective earlier." The detective motioned for me to sit. "Mr. Last Name, we've reviewed the medical reports, the call logs, and the utility shutoff data. It's clear there's cause to proceed with charges. What I need to know now is whether you intend to make a formal statement against your HOA president." My father shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Son, think about the consequences. The neighborhood will be dragged through the mud. Your name, the family name." I slammed my hand on the table, startling even myself. "Stop. I'm not here to protect a name. I'm here to protect my wife and my child." The detective watched me closely, his pen poised over a notepad. "So you'll file?" "Yes," I said firmly. "File everything. I want her held accountable for every drop of water she shut off, for every second of suffering my wife endured." For the first time in days, I felt no hesitation, no fear, only resolve. My father's shoulders sagged. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked smaller somehow, as though the weight of all his carefully constructed facades had finally collapsed, and for once I didn't rush to hold them up. When I returned to my wife's room, Layla was already there, sitting by her side, cooing at the baby through the NICU live feed on the monitor. She looked up and gave me a knowing smile. "So, did you do it?" I nodded. "It's official. Charges are moving forward." She clapped her hands softly, careful not to startle my wife. "Good. Finally, someone's going to put her in her place." But even as she said it, I knew this wouldn't be simple. Karen wasn't the type to cower quietly, and sure enough, within 48 hours, the retaliation began. Neighbors started whispering. Emails circulated through the HOA accusing me of abusing my position at the hospital to manufacture evidence. One even claimed my wife had exaggerated her condition to gain sympathy. Lies spread like wildfire. The hardest moment came when I visited the NICU and found a printed flyer taped to the wall outside. "Director abuses hospital resources to smear HOA. Don't trust him." I ripped it down, my hands shaking with rage. Layla, standing behind me, put a hand on my shoulder. "They're scared. That's why they're lashing out, but the truth will win." Still, the doubt crept in. What if the HOA's smear campaign damaged my reputation at the hospital? What if colleagues began to believe the whispers? I'd built my career on trust, on leadership. Now it felt like Karen was trying to poison the very air around me. One evening, after my wife was discharged and finally home with the baby, I sat in the nursery, rocking our child to sleep. The soft creak of the chair, the sweet scent of baby powder, the warmth of my daughter's tiny body against my chest, it was grounding. And it was in that moment I realized, no HOA, no smear, no neighborhood politics could take this away from me. But it didn't mean I could stop fighting. Weeks passed, the legal process moved forward slow but steady. The medical reports Patel had prepared became the cornerstone of the case. Other residents began to step forward too, stories of Karen shutting off utilities for rule violations, harassing families, threatening fines over trivial matters. It was like a dam breaking. Once one person spoke, others found their voices. The trial itself was grueling. Karen arrived every day with her lawyer in tow, her face twisted in that same smug smile. She called me a liar. She called my wife hysterical. She painted herself as the victim of a vendetta. But then Patel took the stand. He laid out the medical evidence clearly, calmly, undeniably. The charts, the timing, the danger. And when he finished, there was silence in the courtroom, silence so thick it was suffocating. Finally, the jury delivered the verdict, guilty of reckless endangerment. Karen was fined heavily, stripped of her HOA presidency, and ordered to pay damages. It wasn't prison time, but it was accountability. It was a scar she'd carry just as we would. When the verdict was read, I felt my wife's hand slip into mine. She was crying quietly, relief washing over her. Layla hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. And my father, he sat in the back, his expression unreadable. For once, he had no advice, no protests, just silence. Months later, as life settled into a new rhythm, I found myself sitting in a therapist's office with my wife. We decided to seek counseling together, not just for the trauma of that night, but for everything it unearthed. The fear, the anger, the betrayal from those who were supposed to protect us. The therapist asked me a simple question: "What did you learn from this?" I looked at my wife, cradling our daughter in her arms, and then back at the therapist. That silence is dangerous. That reputation means nothing if it costs lives. And that family, real family, is the people who fight beside you, not the ones who tell you to stay quiet. Even now, every time I walk past the nursery and hear my daughter's soft breathing, I remember how close we came to losing her. The scar of that night will never fully fade, but maybe that's the point. Scars remind us of battles survived and the strength it took to win them. And to anyone listening to my story, I want to ask you this. What would you choose if truth meant breaking your family apart, but silence meant risking lives? Think about it. And if my story resonated with you, even in the smallest way, please leave a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Because stories like mine, they aren't just stories, they're warnings.